When you get a diagnosis of cancer, it can lead to a lot of stress and anxiety, from the shock and disbelief that comes from the initial diagnosis to the decisions that have to be made, where you may face information overload as well as problems in deciding what is the right choice for you, especially when your decision-making ability is clouded by lots of different people's opinions. We go through our treatments, which means that we may be facing side effects from medications, which are not only just the nausea and vomiting, but the emotional turmoil of depression and cognitive impairment and helplessness and identity crises. There's this ongoing effort where we have to get tested and monitored, and does it come back, and do we have recurrence, or what if the treatment that we chose doesn't work, where we start to experience sadness and anger about what is actually going on and why is this problem afflicting me. For some people, a diagnosis of cancer leads to an end of life, where we have to face the big monster of death that accompanies us wherever we go, but seems to draw just a bit closer with the diagnosis of cancer. This can bring frustration, guilt, loss of purpose, and feelings of profound helplessness. Once we reach the end of treatment, there is a moment where we go, all right, it's all done, yay. But yet, there is a loss of a structure that has become life, the life that you craft when it is time to get treatment for cancer. When we get to the other side of it, it can take years to fully recover emotionally from the turmoil of cancer. How can we come to the other side of cancer and look at it not as a death sentence, not as one of those moments where we were afflicted by something terrible for seemingly no reason, but how can we find the meaning within the struggle? Find the benefit within what is seemingly such a huge drawback in our lives? And how do we weather the storm of the emotional turmoil that is cancer? Welcome to the Lindsay Elmore Show, a podcast that helps you find fulfillment amidst chaos. On this show, I interview thought leaders, doctors, creatives, spiritual gurus, and game changers who inspire you to pursue your dreams, overcome obstacles, and leave your mark. Cynthia Hayes has been preparing her whole life to write The Big Ordeal, Understanding and Managing the Emotional Turmoil of Cancer. She learned the basics of interviewing, synthesizing information, finding info from the headlines, and telling a story as a journalist early on in her career. She had a brief introduction from her journalism job to earn an MBA from Harvard Business School and spent 25 years as a management consultant. In this role, her success depended on her ability to quickly jump into new topics, ask sensitive questions, understand specialized information, and turn complex findings into a truly compelling narrative. Shortly prior to her own cancer diagnosis, Cynthia resigned from Montefiore Medical Center, where for 3 years she had served as vice president and chief marketing officer, where she focused on telling stories of health and recovery. While at Montefiore, she gained a deeper understanding of medicine and the opportunity to build relationships with cancer professionals who helped her to write The Big Ordeal. When Cynthia is not on the tennis court or writing, she mentors patients who are going through gynecological cancer treatment as a part of the Woman to Woman program at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York. And she serves as a bold buddy peer mentor to patients receiving care care at the Montefiore Center for Cancer Care in the Bronx. She is a board member for Moving for Life, a dance exercise program to help support cancer recovery. She provides education and support to patients in developing country through her work with global focus on cancer. She lives in New York City and has a fabulous husband, Charlie. She has 2 amazing grown children and a lovely Shih Tzu named Horatio. And it has been such an honor to get to interview Cynthia today about how we can do better at dealing with the emotional turmoil of cancer. In fact, I think the lessons that she teaches in this book are so good that it also can give you tips and tools that you need to deal with the emotional garbage of just about any diagnosis. Cynthia Hayes, welcome to the Lindsay Elmore Show.
Well, thank you so much, Lindsay. It is such a pleasure to be here with you today.
In your book, The Big Ordeal, which is all about understanding and managing the emotional turmoil of cancer, right at the very beginning, you lay out so beautifully the cycles of fear and stress and anxiety that go along a timeline from the time that we're diagnosed to the time when we're really going through the treatment, and maybe there's a relapse, and maybe there is time where we are facing that end of life and what happens there. So describe to us how you see the emotional journey of going through a cancer diagnosis.
You know, it surprised me at how common the pattern is. But the first thing that happens when we hear we have cancer is that we panic and we assume that we're going to die. And that existential crisis sort of sets us up for the rest of the roller coaster ride. And what happens is we get this incredible rush of adrenaline, and it kicks us into this fight or flight mode that makes it very hard to sit still and hear everything else that the doctor has to say. So at the same time we're going through all of that, that fear, we're also kicked into a very high level of stress and anxiety. And that fear and stress and anxiety stay with us really throughout the cancer experience. But there are other things that happen as well. So, you know, we hear that we have cancer, but that's not the whole story. We have to get more tests. We have to choose a care team. We have to make big decisions about our healthcare. We have to argue and negotiate for coverage with our insurance companies. We have to put our life on hold and rearrange everything else that we plan to do. So there's overwhelming stress associated with all of that decision making. And then we finally move into the start of treatment. And oh, look out. We have no idea really what's coming for us. And so many things happen during treatment that actually influence and cause a lot of emotions. So there's something in our bodies called cytokines, which are proteins that allow our immune system to communicate and coordinate. And when you get a paper cut, pro-inflammatory cytokines rush to the site of your paper cut in order to say, hey, platelets, let's heal this. Well, if you get a brush of pro-inflammatory cytokines when you get a paper cut, imagine what happens when you undergo surgery. And, you know, same thing with chemotherapy, radiation therapy, immunotherapy. All of these pro-inflammatory cytokines are floating around in your body, and they tell your body, hey, get depressed, go climb under the covers, hide away from it all. And even though the medical team may be telling us you're going to be fine, our bodies are telling us this is scary stuff. I don't know how we're going to survive. We need to hibernate because we're not well enough to do anything but hibernate. So we have all of these tensions going on in our bodies. And then sometimes we have hormonal treatment, or we have treatments that inadvertently affect the hormonal system. We get even wackier in our normal, patterns of life we lose a sense of self-identity. We get more and more fatigued. We have to deal with increased anxiety every time we go for a scan or a test that reminds us, oh, you can't count on your body to tell you what's going on because cancer was growing unbeknownst to you in the first place. And this new scan might show that it's getting worse instead of getting better. And so there's a real sort of PTSD reaction to scans that people typically refer to as scanxiety. And after all of the treatment is over, your medical team sort of goes away and says, okay, see you in 3 months, see you in 6 months. And you are just set loose in the wild with all of your fears and anxiety, which of course makes you feel incredible loss, but so anxious because nobody's looking at you every day the way they were when you were in treatment. And it takes a long time for your body to heal. And then it takes even longer after that for your emotional resilience to return. And so it's an ordeal. It's a big expletive ordeal.
It is. And going back to where you said at the very beginning is it all begins with a rush of stress that brings on the stress of decision making, which brings on the stress of treatment, which brings on the inflammation that can be caused because of treatments, because of surgery, because of disruptions to our normal life where you're having to commute to the hospital every single day or you're having to go 3 times a week and it just goes on and on and on. And one of the things that you mentioned was hormones. And I think what also from the hormonal picture is so challenging about cancer is because a lot of the times hormones are what are actually driving the cancer in the first place. So it's almost like whatever the energetics that you had, the decisions that you made, the way that you're used to eating, the way that you're used to dealing with emotions, all of that has kind of led you to this place where you've manifested a disease that nobody wants, and it's time to like go into fight mode. But sometimes you're working on stuff that maybe have been there even before the cancer diagnosis. And I was wondering, with the clients that you work with, what have been some of the moments of profound awakening that have come from facing this is scary?
Yeah, well, that's an excellent question, Lindsay. You know, I think that for many women, the scariest parts about cancer have to do with all of the changes to their body image. I mean, we, you know, as much as we like to think of ourselves as being liberated, we all care how we look. And even if we're not somebody who wears makeup and, you know, the latest fashions and whatever, we notice when our breasts are gone or when our hair falls out or when they take our ovaries away and we slam into menopause at age 27, or we're on hormone suppressant treatment for our cancer, and it causes radical changes in our body and our ability to think. So I think that one of the biggest awakenings for women going through cancer is, I don't look like I used to look. I don't think like I used to think. I don't feel like I used to feel. Who am I? And I know that this is common for men as well. And you know, whether or not they are on androgen suppressant therapy, if you've been a physical being and now your physical being has changed, it can be very hard to figure out, well, who am I now? And will I ever get back to being who I was before? It's a very destabilizing diagnosis. And even in a household, it can be challenging, because if you were the breadwinner and now all of a sudden you're a couch potato, how do you relate to your loved ones? How do you relate to your children and other household members? Never mind how do you get done what you need to in order to pay the bills and keep the gas on and the health insurance in place. So there's just so many challenges around that initial diagnosis.